All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Unicorn Connector Show, where we talk about relationships, revenue, and referrals, and how it all ties together in the unicorn DNA for unicorn connectors. So, I am thrilled about today's show because we are interviewing Bob Burg. He is the co author of a book that actually really changed my life and helped me help so many people in so many different ways by implementing its teachings. So, the book is called The Go-Giver, and it teaches people about the 5 laws of stratospheric success. And with over 1 million books sold and now founding the Go-Giver Community Network, I am honored and just so excited to be interviewing Bob Burg. So I'd like to introduce you to Bob. Bob, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
No, my pleasure, Daniel. Just great to be with all of you. And I'm sure I know many of you from LinkedIn, and it's always great connecting with everybody. A lot of fun. And you do such a great job on LinkedIn yourself, Daniel. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate that, Bob. A lot of people may or may not know I did a whole week where I dedicated my whole focus to the teachings from the Go-Giver book. And it really was, it changed a lot for me. It was awesome. Like, I can't even express to you how beneficial those 5 laws are that you and John David Mann talk about in that book. So I think that the focus we have today with unicorns living abundantly and looking for ways to provide value, it made perfect sense to have you on the show. So yeah, let's get into it. So Bob, I am curious, before we start talking about all the different laws, why don't you give us a quick review of the 5 laws that you and John share in the book?
Yeah, the 5 laws themselves, and they're based on a premise, like everything always is. And the premise here, Daniel, is simply that shifting your focus, and this is really the key, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well. And, not for any woo-woo way out there, magical, mystical reasons, nothing like that at all. It's actually very practical. When you're that person who can move your focus off of yourself and place it on serving others, discovering what they need, what they want, what they desire, right? When you can move off of yourself and focus on helping other people solve their problems and challenges, when you can make it about them, helping them move closer to happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you, right? They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They want to be part of your life. They want to tell others about you. They want to be what we call your personal walking ambassador. So when we go from that premise, now we take these 5 laws, which work very holistically. And those laws are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity.
Yeah, I love it. One of the laws in there that really stuck out to me that I think is so important with all of this is the law of value. And by providing value, it almost seems like the rest of it kind of comes naturally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, for connectors, people as they're out connecting with other people, making introductions and things like that. I'm curious if you would expand on that law of value and just how it applies to connectors and why it's so important.
Sure. Well, the law of value itself says that your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Now, when you first hear that, it's kind of counterintuitive, right? Because it sounds like, well, it's really nice and everything, but it's also a recipe for bankruptcy. Give more in value than you take in payment. So let me just explain real quickly what we mean. See, there's a difference between price and value. Price is the dollar amount. It's a dollar figure. It's finite. It is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, What is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another person that they will willingly exchange their money for that, or they'll want to be in relationship with you, or they'll want to, anything that person would find to be of value that would cause them to want to be really part of your life. Okay. And so value, and this is so important, value is it's always relative. What I find to be of value might not be what you find to be of value. So it's always in the eyes of the beholder. Now, how does that really relate to connecting? Well, what is connecting? According to the dictionary, it's about, it's bringing people together into contact and establishing a link, if you will, between those people. And that's a good definition. It can mean other things too, but that's, basically what it is. It's bringing people together. Now, when we talk about connecting, how does someone find that to be of value? Right? Some people, let's say you want to just connect people and you're just a connector and you want to just connect people all the time. So, and you feel you're bringing value to their lives. Okay. But let's say different people want to be connected in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you just, let's say, publicly put a post up there on LinkedIn and says, "Hey, Joe and Mary," and you hyperlink them both. "You guys are both awesome. You need to get together. I'll let the two of you take it from here." Well, Joe might love that because to him, any connection is a great connection. He wants to do. Mary might not. She might want to know first, from you, that this person's someone that she should be meeting. She's also very busy with what she's doing, and she needs to really kind of guard her time and make sure she's making just quality connect. You don't know, right?
Yeah.
So a good connector is going to add value first by finding out from the people who they want to connect. Find out, is this the way you want to be connected? Is this a person you'd want to be connected to? How do you want me to handle it and follow through with it? You know what I'm saying? So it's all, so it all depends on who that person is. It's value is always according to them, not us.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so do you as somebody that does focus on relationships quite heavily, do you have anything that you put in place that helps you make sure you're making connections in a valuable way by, do you store that information anywhere about, how people prefer to be introduced?
Well, I pretty much know the people who I connect on a
Right.
constant basis. Okay. And so I always ask a person first how they want to be connected. Okay. So and I'll also, unless I know better, I'm always going to go to each person first and ask if they would like to, to meet another person. I won't even say the name of the person, but someone who I think you would like to meet. This is blah, 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 blah. Would you like me to make a mutual introduction if the other person's agreeable? Right. If they both say yes, I make the introduction. I make an edifying introduction so that I tell each who the other is, what they do, why I think that they would be good people to meet with each other, and so forth. Now, there's certain people in my life that, have said to me, "Well, Bob, you never need to ask me again. If you want to make a connection, just go ahead and do it."
Yeah.
Because they know, right, that I'm only going to connect them to people who it's going to be mutually beneficial.
Right. And that would probably fall under the law of influence, wouldn't it? Where you're putting other people's interests first.
Absolutely. And,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the strands of our unicorn DNA is that unicorns are honest and ethical with genuinely good intentions. And so I feel like that kind of ties into the influence part of it, which is, a huge part of why we have that is because we want to make sure that we're making connections, not just to make a connection, but the right connections.
Right. Very
So,
important.
yeah. And so I think that also kind of ties into why don't you tell me how you would say that ties into the law of authenticity and making
Sure.
connections?
Well, so authenticity, the law of authenticity says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. And in the story, because it's a parable co-authored with John David Mann, as you mentioned, that she said that she shared a very important lesson that she learned, and that is all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are all very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true authentic core. But when you do, okay, when you show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. They feel comfortable with you. They feel safe with you. And why wouldn't they? They know who they're getting. And this is a very important aspect of trust because, people they just so want consistency in their world, and yet we all live in a very inconsistent world, right? We want to make sense of it. So when you are able to be consistent, in a positive way, right? Being consistent negatively isn't any good either, but being
Right.
consistent in a positive way, so and they know what to expect. Well, this really allows you to add trust. So, but there's an interesting aspect of authenticity that I think it's kind of funny and maybe it's the world of the internet that's really sort of changed this a little bit. But I think authenticity, which has become just a word now that is so overused, and it's also, I think, misdefined by a lot of people because it appears as though the definition of authenticity is now just say or do whatever you want with no boundaries, and it's okay because you're authentic. I don't quite agree with that. I don't necessarily think that's the right way to look at authenticity and that's the most productive way. Um, this is sort of like the person who says, well, I have anger issues and I yell at people a lot. And if I were to act any differently, that wouldn't be authentic of me. That's baloney. It simply means this person has an authentic problem
Mm.
that they need to authentically work on in order to become a better, higher, more effective, authentic version of themselves. So we never want to confuse authenticity with not growing, right, and not becoming the best person we can be. Personally, okay, and this is just me, Daniel. I define authenticity as acting congruently with your values.
Mm.
So if you're doing that, you're being authentic, which means you may want to say or do a certain thing, but if your highest value is tact, kindness, consideration, respect, honesty, ethics, whatever it happens to be for you, it may not be that you blurt out some whatever you want to blurt out. That's not necessarily authentic. That's more obnoxious. You know what I'm saying? So when we talk about authenticity and connecting, it means we do so from our true authentic core. It doesn't mean we introduce people the way we want to, because otherwise it wouldn't be authentic. No, it's more authentic to introduce people and connect people as they want to be connected, if our highest value is serving them.
Right. Especially if being a connector is something you identify as, right? A,
Absolutely, yes.
a great connector will connect people in the ways that serves them the best,
Exactly.
right?
Yes. Perfect. Absolutely.
Is
Perfectly.
that's a good segue into the law of compensation, wouldn't you say? Um,
Yeah.
and I also, and before we kind of jump into that, I want to kind of stay on that for a moment and kind of expand on the revenue side of the law of compensation.
Hmm.
So when we talk about, connecting people how they prefer to be connected, um, I to me that makes sense as something that falls under the law of compensation. Tell me how you would relate the law of compensation to being a connector and how they can maximize
Sure.
their that law.
Well, the law of compensation says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So we're law number one, remember, said to give more in value than you take in payment. Law number two says the more people whose lives you touch with the exceptional value you provide, the more money with which you'll be rewarded. You might recall the CEO in the story, Nicole Martin, she shared with Joe, the protege, that law of value represents your potential income, but it's not enough to just serve one person with excellence, right?
Right.
Law number two, the law of compensation represents your actual income because it's all about how many lives you impact. And that's key. And as a great connector, you're impacting the lives of a lot of people. And, as you're meeting someone and establishing and creating a relationship with them, and then you connect with them with someone in your network, someone else within your sphere of influence, you're actually building out your network even more, even further. You're making
Right.
those second, third, fourth, fifth connections because you're pleasing a whole lot of people, right? You're adding value to the lives of a whole lot of people, and that's when the network really starts to build. That's when you have a whole ton of personal walking ambassadors. That's when your business becomes a lot more fun, a lot less stressful, and a lot more profitable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious if kind of tying those two together would be part of the reason why you started the community, the Go Giver community, and and if not, if you would expand on why you did start the community.
Well, we just really wanted to bring people together and provide an opportunity for them, a community, to be able to connect and collaborate and get to know other people who are also living their lives and conducting their business the Go Giver way, which is to focus on the value you can provide others while being open to receiving. And
Right.
Kathy, my business partner, and I, we just we want to create a world of go givers, right? And so that's basically why we started that.
Yeah. Well, and you have. I mean, I see it in people's LinkedIn profiles.
Mhm.
Matt
Yeah,
Hadley, I think he's the one who shouted out to me and asked if I had read the book. And
he's a
actually, I
great
know
guy.
it wasn't Matt, so sorry, it was somebody else.
Matt's a great.
Um, but anyway, I mean, you absolutely are creating that community,
Thank
and I'm curious, how large is that active community? I know you have a community membership. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, we've now, excuse me terribly. What we've now done is merge that into the Go Giver Success Alliance, which is a little bit more geared to, as aside from the community itself. There's now a whole lot of uh, there's more video meetings. We meet at Rachel's virtual coffee house. Rachel, for those who haven't read the book, was one of the characters and so forth, and was a big coffee person. And so so yeah, we're doing that now, and we were up to about 500 members. But we have now taken it down to a few hundred because we're focusing more on that Success Alliance, which is
Okay.
a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. And
Thank you.
so is the idea to kind of build a community of ambassadors for the Go Giver way, essentially?
I think that's not so much the goal as much as it's the result,
Okay.
because
I
the
love it.
goal is to help them build their businesses.
Right.
The
Right.
result is that every great success story leads to more, people who are out there spreading the word.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Bob, can you tell me any stories? I would love to hear a story from you about how connecting with people and applying the Go Giver way has actually helped benefit your life, whether personally, professionally, financially. Do you have any stories you can share with us?
Well, one of my all-time favorites actually happened many years back. I had met a person. It was a guy and his wife and kids at a National Speakers Association meeting, and they were just a wonderful, wonderful family. And I'd always see them at the different a couple times a year. I'd see them at the different events, and at the back then, I was writing a lot of magazine articles. And whenever I would write magazine articles, I use that as a way of positioning myself in the niche, where I was. Um, Once I wrote them, I would always ask if they would. I'd always ask the editor if they'd like to be introduced to any other people who could write articles, who were, and so forth. And so I always referred him. Just I liked the guy, and he was good at what he did, of course. Otherwise I wouldn't have. But I really liked him and his family. I just loved them, and so forth. And I referred other speakers and other authors too. But I'm just right here. The stories about them. So
Yeah.
So this went on for probably a couple of years, and I remember, and I actually referred a couple speaking engagements to them where I wasn't able to do it, and so forth. Now, okay, so this is happening. I'm not thinking anything of it other than they're just, I just love the family and always love seeing them. And there was one client I had that I just was never able to get in the door, and they were big, and it was something I knew that I could really serve them, and it would be very lucrative if that happened. And I was talking to somebody else, another speaker, and they said, "Oh, well, you're friends with so and so," and they named that other person. And I said, "Oh yeah, I see. I visit with his family. Every convention." And they said, "Well, that company is one of his biggest clients." I had no idea. He was a very humble guy. He didn't, talk much about that. I said, "Really?" And they said, "Yeah." So I called him and I said, "Listen," I said, I'm not asking for, an introduction or anything like that, because I don't want to infringe upon your relationship with them. But I'm just wondering if you could advise me, how I might be able to even get in the door, where I would even approach, because I just have not been able to do it." And he said, "Nonsense. I'll have my contact call you." Well, the next day I get a call from his contact, his person, and I ended up doing, business in the millions with that company, right? All because I had connected this guy, right, for 2 years, without thinking. Now, by the way, it doesn't necessarily have to take 2 years. It can be 2 weeks, right? Or
Right.
2 months or 2 days. It just happened to be that was the case with that person. But when you really, when you connect to others without an attachment to having to have results back, direct results back, it's amazing how often it happens. And again, there's no luck. It's not about luck. It's not about karma. It's not about this or it's not that. It's that when you're always looking to help others, when you're looking to genuinely add value to people's lives, and you and I and in your organization, we do that through connecting. We're connectors, right? It creates what John David Mann and I call that benevolent context for your success. And that's so often when that's what happened there.
Right.
Of course, I could have cut that down by a year and a half by having called him, if I'd known him then, and that was my mistake for not finding out about who some of his clients were. But no, they were just lovely people who I enjoyed and loved adding value to, and it came back in a very, very big way.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, and just imagine if you hadn't been open to the fifth law, right?
Ah,
What if you had said, "No, it's fine. I'm just going to do it the hard way."
right. That's a great point. The law of receptivity, law number 5. The key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. Well, what does that mean? It really means nothing more than understanding that, yeah, you breathe out, you also have to breathe in. It's not one or the other. We breathe out carbon dioxide. We breathe in oxygen. We breathe out, which is giving of value. We breathe in, which is receiving of value. Really,
Right.
giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. They're just two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. Now, the world around us doesn't give us that message. The world around us is filled with anti-prosperity messages, and it gets into our head, not just our conscious, but our unconscious. And we have all these horrible messages about money and success and abundance, and think it's bad to receive, and to again, it's all nonsense, but it's stuff the world gives us. And that's why I think it's so important to study prosperity. And there are so many great prosperity authors out there, people like Randy Gage and David Nagel and Sharon Lechter and Ellen Rogan and the late Bob Proctor, Ken Honda, and so many others that do such a magnificent job, because there's so many negative money messages and negative prosperity and abundance messages out there that I think we need to seek out that good information that we can fill our minds with.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I think, I just think that all of the laws together, and obviously you would agree, they're also supportive of just a mindset change and maybe not change, but a structure to a mindset that can really, it almost just makes your life easier in a way.
I agree. Yeah, I always say when you apply these 5 laws together in conjunction, it makes your business, again, I think I said earlier, a lot more fun, a lot less stressful, and a lot more profitable, and so and that's a nice way to do business.
Right.
That
Right.
doesn't mean it's always easy and doesn't mean there aren't problems and challenges. Life, it's business, what have you. But when you consistently do these things, you're really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right, cool. So Bob, I'm curious, as we are kind of wrapping up, if you were to, before ever creating the Go Giver 5 laws of stratospheric success, if you were to say there was one piece of advice that you ever given before doing any of this, what would you say was like the number one most impactful piece of advice?
Uh, I think it was a guy about close to 40 years ago. I'd been in sales for a little while and doing fairly well, but I was in a slump and I took my focus off where it should have been, which was the customer, and I put it on myself, which is trying to, get out of the slump. The important thing to remember always is that nobody's going to buy from you because you want to make the sale, right? They're not going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. They're not going to buy from you because you need the money, and they're not going to buy from you just because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And when you think about it, that's the only reason why anybody should buy from you or from me or from anyone else. And I remember coming back to the office one day in the midst of this horrible slump, and this older gentleman, he was not even in the sales department. I think he was an engineer and he retired soon after. I didn't know him very well, but he was one of these guys who, whenever he say, he didn't say much, but whenever he did say something, it was always profound. And so you listen to him, right?
Right.
And I remember he said, Berg, he was a last name kind of guy. He said, Berg, can I give you some advice? And I said, yeah, please do. I need it. And he said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your
Mm,
target is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, he said, you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It isn't the target itself. Your target is serving others. And, I think that if I look back at it, it's at that point, Daniel, that I came to the understanding that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Um, Great salesmanship is never about the product or service itself, as important as those are. That's not what it's about. Great salesmanship is about the other person. It's about that person whose life you are attempting to bring value to. I guess what you could really say, it's about another person's life being better just because you are part of it. And I think that when we approach sales from that foundational premise, which would be the go giver premise, right? That I think now we're able to create that benevolent context for success.
right. That's incredible. I think that's very important information. So I love that. And I really hope that people from hearing this can take away the keys to those 5 laws, and I highly recommend anybody listen to or read the book. It's a very short, very just kind of a fun book to listen to. So, The Go Giver is the book we're talking about, just to hit that one home. You can check it out on Bob's website. And where's the best place for people to get the book?
Yeah, Burg.com, Burg.com is the best place to go. They can read a chapter for free to see if they like it first, and they can always click through. And while they're there, they can subscribe to my daily impact email that I send out Monday through Friday mornings.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to mention that you definitely want to make sure to do that. And I thought today's email was very interesting. You talked about, you know, understanding ways to learn, and that there are kind of two sides to learning new lessons, right? So I think that I'll just kind of leave it at that, let other people subscribe to it, and get the juicy gold in their inbox themselves.
Great.
So, Bob, I really appreciate you being on here. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap this up?
No, I just been great being with you. Always enjoy our conversations on LinkedIn, and I wish everybody a fantastic, stratospherically successful 2023.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Have an excellent week.